have a karakia, and then we're going to have a moment of silence for Uncle Rutene Irwin, tātou rangatira o Taitanga Mahaki, and we'll continue our agenda from there. Okay. Thank you. Right. Kia ora, Josh.
Mēnoi tātou. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness this holy matrimony between these councillors and these agenda items. Dear Lord, I hope that you help guide us in this holy union moving forward, and that things on this agenda are met with grace and with dignity. Dear Lord, bless those who are in hospital, those who are sick, and those who have passed away. These things I say in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Moment of silence. Thank you. And also, I'd just like to let you know face to face that I'm retiring this year. So thank you so much. And we'll just carry on with our agenda. We'll have more stuff later on regarding this matter. Apologies, Councillor Thompson. Moved by Councillor Seymour, second by Councillor Stoltz. All in favour? Aye. Contrary carried. We've got some conflicts or interests, Karen? Hey, yeah, but no pecuniary. So we go to the minutes, first page 4. Moved by Councillor Burdett, second by Councillor McLean. All in favour? Aye. Contrary carried. Any matters arising from those minutes? All good? No questions, no corrections. We move on. We go to the... tukua mātou mihi ki a tātou kaimahi hau api hahau o te kaunihera. Kia ora, Walton. Rāua ko Weremu Civil Defence Emergency Manager, and Walton is Māori Engagement Liaison Officer. So, piki mai, kake mai. Thank you. And so we go to page 11, which is the Tairawhiti Economic Action Plan refresh. Yep, very good. Kia ora, Chris. Right, we'll get a cheer for Chris. Come over, Chris. Ahead of time. Right, Chris, sorry. Rushing ahead.
That's right. Really pleased to see in this, good morning everybody. Pleased to see in this Tairawhiti 2050 draft plan and the key questions. We know that the movement of logging trucks through our communities to the port is a major challenge. How should we manage this? That's a great question. Are there ways to divert the volume of logging trucks away from our city and surrounding neighbourhoods? Yes, there are ways to do that. And it has 3 discussion points. An alternate port location with a question mark after it. Look, I think this is pretty unlikely. 2, the use of rail. Yes, logs from south and west could possibly use this option, but it does nothing to prevent the movement of logs from the north through the city. A northern port, the same thing. It still doesn't remove the movement of logs from probably midpoint in the coast through the city. What I'd like to see added to this draft plan here, and that's essentially is my reason for being here today, is a third option there, and that's a heavy traffic bypass. The issue essentially is getting logs from northeast to the west side of the city, to Matawhiro, where most of the logs end up now before they end up going to port or elsewhere. You've got, I can see in front of you. Look, the key question here is how do we get logs from east to west without going through the city? There is an option, and that's Tolga Bay, Tairawhiti Road, etc. to Waimata Valley, but that adds considerable distance to the trip, and is whilst it'll benefit those up Hokaroa Road way and in there, it doesn't do anything for logs coming down from further up. Sheet A2 shows an option. There's a paper road that comes inland from Tiriho and meets Goodwin Road. It's 8.2 kilometres of already surveyed and road reserve. It's a paper road. If that were developed and you went through Goodwin Road to Tukituki Valley Road, you would entirely bypass the city, and there would not be a great deal of distance increase in getting to the port, considering that the main location first off is to get to that west side of the city, to Matawhiti. The second part of the equation is getting it from Matawhiti to the port. And there's an option to turn left at the airport and go onto the rail reserve via an overpass over Lytton Road, and another one over Stanley Road, for a direct and unimpeded access to the port. Would have to rise up and get over high enough so that boats could come through and use the inner harbour, but it would pop down into the port. The last page, A4, shows a model for just-in-time delivery to the port. If Matawhiti could act as the battery for the port, essentially the storage area for all the logs, then that would remove the need for log storage at the port. And if just-in-time delivery was used as an option, again, you could remove the need for all that log storage. I could see in the future using electric log trucks. They have them now. And they would fit, I think, quite nicely with ECT's sort of plan for electrification of vehicles. On the page here, I've written a number of benefits, but first and foremost, I think it would future-proof and ensure the sustainability of the port, and it would remove, in conjunction with, say, the Tiriho Road, all heavy vehicles from the city. This is one option. There's a number of other options, and other people have been working on other options. This has been a collaboration, and I see it purely as a conversation starter. I think where there's a will, there's a way. This would be an expensive operation, but the will first starts, I guess, with you guys. And if there is political will for a heavy vehicle bypass to free up our city and beaches, then I think that would be a good thing. That's it.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions? Councillor Seymour?
Thank you very much, because it's really interesting. Have you had you say it's collaborative, but have you had a discussion with anyone from the port yet?
No.
No, thank you. And if I look at the Tiriho to the Waimata, most of that would be upper valley floor. wouldn't be dragging them up. I'm just trying to pick up from the topography of this picture.
No, topography is pretty gentle actually. It's
Yes.
surprisingly so. It's no, it would be a pretty easy route.
Thank you. And just one further thing though, I mean, not all the logs go to OptiLog. A lot of logs come down from the coast and go straight to the wharf.
Exactly, yes. So we'd still like them to go around town rather than through town. That's the whole idea of this, is essentially to, well, to improve our quality of life in the city.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Chris. From the map here, it's not about that clear, but when you get onto Back Ormond Road, what do you envisage turning right and using the main highway out, you know, past the Hicker and getting into all the logs into Matafero that way?
Yes, yeah, I think there needs to be a designated route that goes through that would sort of intercept anything coming, say, from Tikaraka Way and obviously all meeting roughly at Apuni Road there.
So just on adding to that, your philosophy is that all logs will end up at Matafero and being shipped just in time to the port from that Matafero area?
Yes, exactly. That's the vision.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for your innovation and coming in today to share it with us. We have had some deputation petition from the port even in regards to, you know, them having concerns around movement of the logs in previous meetings. So where there's a will, there's a way. Perhaps as, you know, this whole kind of conversation does need to be had. So is that the next stage of where you will take this into? If we're going to, you know, progress some conversations, is that I mean, you've come to us today, obviously, to see what we feel. We're getting a lot of people coming into our meetings with major concerns about the noise, the impacts of logging on passing their houses and health and all those factors, as well as loss of life. So in the next space for you, where do you see yourself taking this from here?
Well, look, for today, my only aim is to ask you guys to actually put a heavy vehicle bypass into this document so that the discussion is there. I'd be quite happy if that happens. But from here, yeah, look, there's a number of options out there, and I think I think first off, you guys are the leaders of our community, and it really needs to be pushed by you guys to have any real impetus, I think. But look, obviously all players need to be involved, and not least the port, because they're absolutely the key in this. But to me, you guys are the leaders, and it is to you guys that we look to resolve this issue or to begin the conversation.
Thanks. Just supplementary, I'm not sure you're aware, we have got a report we're waiting on from a Cardno group looking at the vehicle bypass, so you know about that. Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Chris. You have a good day.
Cheers.
Sorry. Yes. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you. Chris, on the plans, there's a option there that already exists, which is the rail that runs from Matafero already to the port. Has there been any consideration for utilising that rail instead of truck transport into the port?
Yes, there has, but because of the length of a train and the turning circle of it, I think it would be it wouldn't work. If you look, I mean, this picture here, the satellite one, tells the story exactly of how the whole operation works, and essentially it's just logs are getting picked up from the dump beside there and then driven around beside the truck, beside the boat, sorry. Now, the beauty of the trucks and a bypass is, one, being electric, they are virtually silent. Two, they can operate at sort of all hours of the night. Three, they are highly manoeuvrable, and the ability to sort of stop, stagger, for just-in-time delivery. You know, there's the ability in future that those trucks are autonomous and controlled by a logarithm that would take into account a hurry up, a speed up for loading, or a slow down for loading, or that sort of thing, and that whole system could be managed. A train is, to me, too large a vehicle and not ideally suited to just in time.
Supplementary, that I guess I would, I guess I said the opposite is true. That do you not think that multiple truck movements versus a single train movement, you know, is there benefit in multiple truck movements versus a single train movement where you're moving the entirety of the load at a single time instead of having to shuffle?
Yeah, look, Shannon, no, I disagree respectfully. It's no, I think that the key to just in time is small, nimble vehicles that can be easily sped up, slowed down, diverted, etc. I think that's critical.
I think the main thing is that Chris has laid down the topic of concern. We're not here to debate it. I think one of the progresses is actually to move it to Bill's Committee of Regional Roading. Andrew?
Yeah, thanks. The other way to skin the cat is the coastal barging of logs. If we had a port somewhere north of Turihoe, it would solve the problem as well, and it could actually be less expensive. The bit going through town is going to be hugely expensive. What are your thoughts on taking it off the roads altogether and coming down via coastal barges?
Look, it's an option. Already the port is weather constrained, and I'd imagine barging would be as well. There's plenty of times when there'll be ships sitting out in the bay just waiting to be loaded. I look at this beyond logs, because look, logs may be here for the long term. They may not. Overseas people may decide not to buy them or something like that. But a route like that would be for all heavy vehicles. So the Turihoe route, I would see as getting stock trucks, roading trucks, the whole sort of, it's not just for logs only. And I also see for the future of the port, I see the way that Dunstan Road area and everything like that is developing into a major sort of industrial and I guess to a certain degree technological hub. One of the benefits of this bypass to port is that it goes straight past the airport and would provide an alternate access to the airport, which I think would be, again, another fantastic benefit of the whole thing.
Thank you, Chris. You have a good day.
Cheers, man.
Right. We always note these things, don't we, Nadine? There'll be some appropriate response pathways. Righto, Tairawhiti Economic Action Plan refresh. As you can see, it's been fresh. It's been page 14 is what was, and then there's some new ones or redefined. I don't see housing in there. I think housing is critical in the growth of our region, actually, and somehow it needs to be mentioned so it can actually, whether it's private development, government development, or council development, whoever wishes to develop houses is critical. We've noticed that the number of people that come in, did you know that the population is actually 49,100 now? 49,100. It's actually grown 2,000 in the last 18 months. And Councillor Wilson will attest to that because he's on the health board. The number of registrations is booming. And so, you know, even like 1,800 people coming in divided by 3 people, that's still 600 homes, which we haven't built. So I think housing is going to be critical, and Councillor Dowsing can attest to that. So I would like to suggest that we actually start housing as part of that. The other thing I don't see is the MA. Is this back in?
MA's already in there, so these are the
new ones.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were sort of like taking the old ones out and putting this new lot in. Right, Keita, Keakwe.
further to the Mayor's comments, just to reiterate, these are new agreed actions as a result of the TEEP table. So you're familiar with the TEEP group that meets monthly, and they've gone through a refresh of the previous document. So these are some of the new actions that they'd like to focus on, obviously combining the PGF opportunities, but also not losing sight of the development of the previous plan. They've been well considered, noting the housing one. I think there is some research being commissioned by Activate Tairawhiti in that space, and we're working collaboratively with them in terms of housing, and definitely we expect it to be an issue during the spatial plan as well.
The interesting thing about TEEP is that if you're seeking PGF grants or funding from other government organisations, they look at your Tairawhiti Economic Action Plan. If it's not in there, it sort of doesn't get that intense support. So it's very important that it is actually in there. Even though AT is doing the work, it should be headlined in the action plan itself. Councillor Foster.
Just a comment, just with the investigating the promotion of the tourism and the Makarori thing, headland in particular, I mean, it would be a great initiative with Councillor Dunn doing a paper soon on the surfing reserve, which we've both been kind of actively trying to promote. That would be a great initiative as far as a tourism park goes for Makarori.
Surf park.
Yeah, surf park, yeah, surfing reserve. So that would fit in perfectly for that initiative.
A surf park. It could always be added in as part of the growing tourism, Makarori Headlands surf park option, while at the same time contributing to visitor experience.
Your Worship, question I have is who's going to own and drive that option as an initiative? So these are council-owned initiatives that we will be responsible for delivering on. So am I getting general consensus that you want staff to work on that particular initiative?
Looks like it. It's really just a matter of spatial planning, Councillor Seymour. Some words and some document that says that that's the surf park. It's not putting any structures or making some rocks or building some sandbags in the thing. It's just it's like a marine reserve, you know, as a conceptual principle thing.
But we should have the paper first, because I mean that's standard practice. You don't just pull something. It's a good idea. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I'm talking about process. So council needs to put the paper needs to come to council, then council accepts that paper, and then it can be inserted as the chief executive suggested.
Well, that's what.
Otherwise, we can all sit around the table and put our hand up, and we've lost the process. Yeah,
I mean that's what FT is for, isn't it? Is to be fluid.
Yes, but we still have to have a paper, Your Worship.
Hopefully, we don't need a housing paper. Councillor Stoltz.
I just wanted to ask. We had the plan, and then for years we didn't do any refresh, and now we're doing a refresh. Will this now be an annual or maybe every second year? Because some of these have actions that go up to 2034, and we need to be agile and change. Some situations might change. So will there be a constant renewal and a refresh as we go forward?
I anticipate there will, but if we can think of the parallel processes that are going here. So this is really an action list for the region to support economic development. So the list to refresh, obviously some things have already come off that we've delivered on, referencing the Tairawhiti Resource Management Plan, the minor changes that we made. So that one is coming off the list. These are some of the new ones. Obviously, as time and stakeholders start raising issues, then obviously, but I don't think that it's regularly on a cycle annually, but definitely a great recommendation to consider.
See, the other thing that's, who wants to speak next? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Looking at this plan, it's mostly around infrastructure. and with a few tourism things thrown in. And I can understand why it is that way, but it's a little disappointing that we actually can't identify some major economic development opportunities in this region that is actually in this plan. And it doesn't give me great confidence when other areas are, I guess, are a long way ahead of us. And I understand why, you know, probably the infrastructure. We've got a lot of issues in this region, and having enough water and the right roads and all the rest of it. If you don't have those, well, you can't even think about anything grander than that. But I think we need to look a little bit further into the future and start planning for some major other industries and things like that. At least start planning for it and signal it in that, or even if there is investigations into certain things. But I can't get too excited about this plan, to be honest, because it's just the same old things that we've been dealing with for donkey's years, and there is nothing to look to the future.
Yeah. We'll get Meredith first. Meredith, thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. Yeah, I guess I could follow on from Councillor Wilson's dialogue just in the now, because I circled a couple of things that stood out to me initially. The authentic Tairawhiti brand. I was intrigued to know what that will look like and who determines that authenticity. It's a living document, so the fluidity of agile is obviously within the scope, because it states it's a living, it's designed to be a living document. So, because one of the issues we have often is plans are made and then put on a shelf of sorts. And then inclusive growth. I was heartened with that B on page 13 that says a broader consideration of inclusive growth for the region, working to ensure that economic development growth contributes to shared community prosperity, because there's a portion of our general public that are not having any prosperity. And so when I look at a Tairawhiti economic action plan and see that we still have some challenges ahead of us within our unemployment and housing, and certainly skill bases, and a whole lot of work is going on, when we will reap those benefits, I guess we're hopeful sooner than later. But I would like to think that we are a little bit more aspirational. I'm heartened we have got people working hard up the coast in spaces, building an empire and an industry there, but there are a lot of people that are not reaping or having any economic benefits in our region. And it's really important, I think, for this group to go and speak to or gather some of the people whose world hasn't changed much in the maybe 2 decades since state homes are sold off, and all the impacts of that's had onto a portion of our public who still, whilst they're not deemed ratepayers, their rates are paid through another mechanism. I would like to say that that statement, you know, shared community prosperity, means that all people in this region will see something of prosperity, because there are lots of people that haven't for a long time.
Sure.
It's their time too.
So if I can just add, like inspiration to me would be like when Singapore decided to be an IT hub of the world, or some other countries will call them the financial hubs of the world. And, you know, we just come back from Ireland, and Councillor Dowsing would support being the IT as one of the things. But one of the emerging things, and whether you like it or not, this marijuana cannabis thing is going to be a big deal. It's going to be billions, literally billions of dollars with the industry, and even just mentioning that in the economic plan itself actually creates inspiration. And they said, yes, that's where the Tairawhiti region is heading, is into the biotech, biomedicine area, you know. And so just small stuff like that actually changes people's thought process, because what we're dealing is, with respect, this is the sort of the old industry, right? Forestry, horticulture, agriculture. But what is the next one? You know, I've got some, my friend is gathering deer placenta, and he dries it in dried ice. And for a container about this big, it's about $2,000. And so, you know, normally the deer placenta is actually chucked away after it's had its baby or whatever. But now it's actually medicine, biochemistry, you know, biohealth. And so those are the sort of things. There are some things that we can't achieve. We're not going to be building cars here unless, you know, rah-rah, but definitely with the cannabis, we can see the trend. You know, the trend is going to be heading that way. And unless it's in here, it doesn't actually get noticed, not only by us, but by people that are willing to support. Anyway, Councillor Dowsing. Sorry, Nadine. Yeah.
Thank you. I was just going to mention our successful trip to Ireland as well, and there has been a lot of movement here in the innovation and impact space. So we're working currently on some very big projects in region, and that is inclusive of a very substantial tech strategy for the region at the moment, and also community affordable, sustainable housing. And I'd be happy to, it's still commercially sensitive, but I'd be happy to present to councillors after public excluded, if they like.
Councillor Wharehinga, Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Your Worship. I like these new priorities that are in this team. I think that our responsibility as council are to provide robust infrastructure in order to be able to enable the economic aspirations of our community, like the Kurangi enterprises and their hemp stuff, like our forestry industry. I like the fact that State Highway 35 is featured strongly in there because a lot of our industry does come from up the coast. And as you've said previously, Your Worship, that unless it's in here, the central government kind of can't feed into it and we can't really do anything about it. I think the aspirational stuff is why we have organisations like AT, ECT, why we have our community, etc., etc. So it's on us to make sure that we do the groundwork stuff right and get that stuff sorted.
Amber? And then Nadine. Definitely Nadine after Amber.
Yeah, following on from similar thing to Councillor Wharehinga. Council doesn't do innovation per se or create businesses. We actually create an enabling environment for people to come in and be able to do that here. So we're creating the conditions for our people and businesses to thrive and be successful. That is fundamentally our job as council, and that's what we should be putting into these sorts of documents. You were talking about domain expertise, which is Singapore's IT. Our domain expertise is growing. We are absolutely outstanding at growing things. Cannabis might be the next big thing that we do. So ensuring that we have the conditions to keep doing that is really, really important. I noticed a couple of things on here, and I agree with you saying it has to be in this document or the government's not going to look at it. On page 14, we've taken out council's policy for financial incentives, which I agree with. But I was wondering if we could have something like a Tairawhiti CV, which is our investment environment that we have. This is how much housing is. This is how much commercial property is. This is, so people can get this like one-pager CV of this is how easy it is and how cheap it is to live in Gisborne, do business, our lifestyle. I had a man from Northland who asked me that precise thing a couple of years ago. Oh, well, I had to do my own research, Amber, and it's actually an amazing investment environment in Tairawhiti, but you don't do anything about it. So I was wondering if we could have something like that in the team. That could be council's responsibility. So it's like an investment CV in a sense, rather than financial incentives, because we just can't afford to do financial incentives. And the other one, which is what I mentioned in Wastewater Management Committee the other day, is a circular water economy for Tairawhiti. In here, we're just saying alternative use and disposal. Well, let's make our things much bolder and bigger and create a really positive picture of what we actually want. Alternative use and disposal doesn't have any sort of sexy factor about it. But when you start thinking circular and you're talking about taking that valuable resource and trying to reuse it for productive reuses, then things start talking about the future and it supports our growers' economy, etc., etc. So that they're in there. I'm just talking about better titles that are eye-catching and make you want to go, oh, I need to learn more about it, or especially the funders to do that.
Nadine.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to, just in terms of the process, step back through what this one was about, is requesting you to approve your actions that go into the plan. So the overall strategy does have some actions like, as Councillor Dowling had mentioned, around IT strategy. There is the medicinal cannabis is included. These are just the actions that council is directly responsible for. There is a section around circular economy in there, so certainly can put some wording around that to better reflect the intent around the wastewater alternative use. And I will check in to see if the housing one is already being covered by TEEP. But so this is for, if not, then that is one that is likely to have been omitted. And we do have a partnership role in the housing space. So in terms of next steps, it's really about, are you okay with these actions that we are directly responsible for delivering? And then that will go into the full plan, which does have some inspirational aspects in there, and then that will come back for adoption.
Yeah, that's great. And so, I don't know if we need, sorry, Councillor Seymour.
Can I just say, I think that's great and totally support what Councillor Dunn has said, but in regard to the housing, or even in regard to the development of a facility to enable whatever these bright new businesses are, we still need to have something in here. And I notice we're taking out the, and Councillor Dunn's referred to the financial incentives bit, but we still need to make sure we stress the 9.3, the regulatory framework and enabling, because that's the point that is really important, that we don't set up blocks. And while we won't be building the houses, we need to make the planning process around somebody else potentially building the houses or the affordable housing more agile than it is right now. So we need to make sure we strengthen those tasks that we're responsible for.
Yeah, thank you. You really, it's great thinking, you know, because we are in Futures Tairawhiti. Hey, thinking, helicopter, whatever they say. Right,
Just
so are we keen to include a surf park in there, if that's one of your responsibilities in terms of driving the regulation? There, I'm keen. Oh, yeah. Do we need a paper, do we?
See, it would have been great to see where this is anchored in the wider document, because that's why we're raising these things, because we can't see what's in the rest of it.
There's no transparency.
For your worship, you had a presentation when you did the workshop, and that provided the context of the different areas, so the overarching view.
Didn't see it
and
all,
now
though.
it was deep dive into what you're responsible for.
Right, Larry.
Just before we wind up, when we have the steering, or when there is the steering group meetings to confirm the refreshed TEOP, are councillors allowed to go along to the steering group meetings? I mean, we were allowed to go along to the navigations one because we weren't actually members at the time, but a lot of us are really interested in how this evolves. We are the main drivers of this as well, being council on the infrastructure side, so I believe it would be really important for us to be able to attend these steering group meetings, even as an onlooker, just to gather information.
So through your worship, the council is represented, so it's an operational working group, and I sit on that body with the other CEs from other departments or organisations in the region, along with senior officials from central government. It would be under the approval of that steering group, because that's not, we do not own that steering group. That councillor sitting in and watching would be.
They don't have a governance group. That's the problem.
We do.
I guess the question is there any reason it is private, or is there an opportunity for public viewing of those meetings?
It's an operational group, so it's not, so if we start doing that, it's where does it start and stop with all other aspects? All other meetings, sorry.
Mr. Bidette.
Given constraints of the last economic development plan
non-councillor input, just having heard what you've said, how do we get an all-encompassing plan at the end of it if the likes of Larry's request is not covered?
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand.
Well, I mean, I think one of the, supplementary, Your Worship, one of the issues that last time was we didn't believe, and I certainly didn't believe, that the district as such were consulted before the plan came out. By coincidence, I happened to reread the plan on Sunday, and yeah, there are deficiencies in the one that's just been put to one side.
So through Your Worship, the process is, so in terms of this, last time you didn't seek approval for your actions, so now you have those actions. You were involved in a workshop around determining what those actions were. Your Worship, you're on a champion governance group for TEEP now. We put that in place because of the governance concerns, so you meet quarterly around this stuff. The process is this goes into the TEEP overall, remembering that you're not responsible for all the economic development actions. It's a partnering approach, and then that document comes back for approval and goes out for community engagement.
Okay.
Thank you. Right, so it says in the recommendations here that we approve the list, but we need to signal that there are other aspects that are coming to it. Housing and surf park. Councillor Akohaka.
Well, just in line with the tourism mechanism that's in here, all I had a query on was, I see that we've got some specifics in that space, but that's not the all and sundry of our tourism space, right? I mean, in the sense that there are other navigational speak stories that are not just over this side of town. I mean, I'm just aware that there are those who are really looking at putting together ideas and plans in other parts of the region. So when we look at this, growing our tourism sector 5.2, that's just for this in the now thing, but we've got other opportunities and navigations and stories that are still being worked on that can come into this space. Is that what this is a working?
As it refreshes, which is every 3 years as we have done with this, yes, and new actions come up that the council has resolved it's going to support, then that will get included as council's responsibility.
Yeah, because I'm just aware that iwi and other collective groups in our region are talking a lot more about the collaborative partnerships that we're pushing forward into, and have some new ideas coming up all the time. So it's ongoing.
So through Your Worship, if it helps, the other entities or organisations are also working on their actions to come together, which is why you're not seeing, everything. All you got was the high level, these are the sections that we're looking at, these are some of the gaps, and then you workshopped your part. So I appreciate the comments before. It'd be good to see the whole picture, but every other people that are feeding in will be doing the same thing around whether they're the right actions for their particular sectors.
But we're also feeding into it from this meeting. Councillor Stops.
And I just was going to say what Nadine is saying. The previous time, the mayor was not involved for just some reasons, but since then, the mayor has been involved in the Super Champion and the CEO. So I acknowledge what Bill said. We did feel left out, but we also need to take into account this is not just a council plan. This is a region plan. So all these actions are also taken to other organisations who work on their actions, and then we will take a look at the big plan and then see where we fit in.
Yeah, we haven't had a meeting yet.
I just noticed, sorry, that GHL wasn't in one of the listed partners. That's what I was
meeting must be coming every quarter.
And Your Worship, once this is all put together and the other parties have put their data together, is it then going to be produced into another plan? So we have got a proper reference document like we've had previously.
Yeah. All in favour? I move. Seconded by Councillor Foster. All in favour? Was it? What did you have there, Coral? Okay, all in favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Thank you so much. Now we have page 18, spatial community engagement method. Councillor Burdett.
And I just want to see, given that it's futuristic, some figures so that we know exactly what this is going to cost in time.
Figures for anticipated future actions or figures for the spatial planning exercise?
What ultimately will cost this council from our share? You've got to have some idea of what it ultimately will cost us, because I think what you've done is pretty good.
Can I clarify your question in terms of costs for,
well, I'm just
for the
talking
plan?
about our specific share in terms of what we are promoting, in terms of figures going forward. Have you any idea what this is all going to cost?
So future investment, the purpose of the plan is to guide investment.
Yes.
And depending where the plan lands, you saw examples today of suggestions towards alternative traffic routes. Obviously, they need to be costed, and the quantum, we couldn't anticipate that now. And as we go forward, you've either identified it as a priority or not, and then we proceed to getting costings to make sure that the future council can weigh up, is this a viable option for us or not?
All I'm saying, supplementary, Your Worship, is everything comes at a cost.
Well, this is just a
Absolutely
journey.
noted.
Yes, it is.
Beginning.
Yeah.
Councillor Cranston, Councillor Dowson.
Yeah, thanks. When we did the spatial planning workshop, something that came up was the moving of the Te Puia to Ruatoria. At the moment, the coast's got huge inefficiencies, huge inefficiencies. And by that, I mean Bill getting his house painted. You know, he had to suffer 3 hours travel per day for the painters to come up from Gisborne. At the moment, we've got all sorts of services going up there from Gisborne each day. And we've got a huge growth up there with the potential cannabis up there. And we have heard from the Mānuka industry and from building up there that they really struggle to resource it by way of personnel to get them. I think we should really look at what we can do at Ruatoria and have that as a real spatial growth area. Because at the end of the day, the logging trucks and that could be based there and come down rather than go up here. They're going up there at 2 in the morning now, you know, so that they can get their trips. So if some of the traffic was coming the other way, so the development of Ruatoria could potentially be a real futuristic spatial planning exercise for us, because otherwise it's always going to be an inefficient commercial sector because of the travel that's involved getting up there. You know, truck breaks down, you've got to get someone up from Gisborne all the time. So those inefficiencies could be addressed by having a real good look at Ruatoria and seeing if that, in our spatial plan, could be a focus area that can be developed. It's got the land area and all that up there, and I think it could create some real efficiencies on the coast, which are missing at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think, first of all, I agree with Councillor Cranston in that there's a real opportunity up there, and they, with the growth of the cannabis industry, they're going to suffer many of the same problems as we currently do in the city here, which is that there'll be lack of housing, etc. And in terms of the cost of this plan, going to Councillor Burdett's questions, there's no actions associated to this yet. There's nothing that staff can cost. The real cost would be if we didn't do this thoroughly enough and we miss enormous opportunity in our region, because this is going to beyond the core duties of what council do. This is the biggest document in terms of actual future growth and planning to support economic development in our region, in my opinion. So the cost at this stage is only staff time, and it's worth every minute that they spend on it, in my opinion. To take this forward, I think it almost runs hand in hand with things like like the previous paper we just talked about. We need to be looking at the wider opportunity in region and delivering the spatial plan alongside the concept of economic growth alongside the vision of how many people are going to be coming to region, alongside the desire of our community to grow in the right way and to enjoy all of the beautiful things that we love about living in Tairawhiti and not damage them through growth. And I think that's where the core of this plan is. It's enabling us to continue living the way we want to live, whilst allowing us to grow.
Councillor Seymour.
The points that Councillor Cranston raised are very points that can easily come up when the workshops are taken out to the communities at the discussions, if they're going to be held at the forthcoming meetings. But one of the issues around the coast is the lack of electricity generation, which was raised at something that Councillor Stoltz and I were at the other day. And so we need to make sure that, and while there'll be people in the room that will instantly say we should generate it out of timber, it was really interesting that it was a timber initiative that may not be able to come to Gisborne because there's not sufficient volume of electricity. So we need to make sure that there's a whole lot of other things included in this document. And it does bother me a bit. And for some reason the pages don't seem to be, page 37 of 132, which is the page looking at external audiences. And it bothers me a bit that we've got a big spread of government departments at the bottom of this page. And we've got nothing about the companies and the businesses that are potentially going to grow to employ people in this town. And, you know, government ministers and ministries will talk to us and they'll give us some indications around employment issues. But at the end of the day, they're not the people that are going to make things happen locally. So I'd really like to think that we did actually talk about, because we're only talking about very high level groups in here, and it doesn't really seem to me that industry or potential growers, and most of us heard from one of our apple growers a year or so ago what they were planning for. So let's not leave out the people that are actually going to make the economic development happen so that they can be included. And, you know, housing is another one. And I mean, we've heard Councillor Dowsing refer to it previously. There has to be land to put houses on, and yet this doesn't talk about anything like that. So we need to actually ensure that while we're having this high level discussion, we're also not excluding, in fact, we are inviting and including the people that are actually going to make any of these actual things happen. Jobs, new initiatives, as Councillor Dowsing has talked about this morning, and the same in the horticultural sector.
Councillor Stoltz.
I just want to touch on what Councillor Seymour said. When I looked at our consultation page, we do have very targeted approaches. I just want to make sure the bottom bit where we said public consultation, at that stage we are already going out to the public saying to them, this is what we vaguely are planning, give us your input. But we do need to make sure we don't go with such a predetermined plan, turn up at townships up the coast and tell people what they know. Most people live in those communities. There's a lot of knowledge in our community. So I just want us to be mindful that when we do go, we put as much value on the public input like we do on the targeted approach. Because like I wrote a column, what's on in council on Monday, this to me is one of the most important pieces of work for us to determine where growth will happen. So that growth don't happen and we're running afterwards to try and solve it, that we determine what happens. So I just want to emphasise we need to make sure we hear what the public says in their place.
Your Worship, can I just reinforce that? Because even though you might have time to touch on it in this workshops, council cuppa, which I hate that name, it just sounds so tacky, in those meetings that you're about to have, and so I won't use that name again, I don't think that's going to give the community enough time to add all of their input, so we should flag it at those meetings, because I know you've got, you know, there's only an hour allowed for some of them, and go back again so that you can talk to all of the people and give them the information that they can go away with maybe on those council meetings, and then come back to another meeting so that they genuinely have the opportunity to say what's important for them, rather than us sit down here and look like we're saying this is what should happen in Rotorua, because it's for the people of that region with our support to say what they see should happen for their community. Thank you.
Councillor Fenn.
Thank you, Worship. Just to add on to Councillor Seymour's comments and talking about targeted groups, I just want to make sure that if we're definitely targeting groups, there is a youth group in there. There are a group of young people, because this is 2050 this goes out to, and it is about their future. Like, we're talking about economic development and jobs. Their jobs aren't even created yet. We don't even know what those jobs are. So it'd be really important we do talk to our young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Taufa. Councillor Wharehinga.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, really good idea in regards to engaging our youth. We have 2 youth MPs actually elected in Gisborne that represent us at central government. So that'll probably be a really good place to start in regards to youth representation and leadership capacity. While we're talking about niche groups, townships definitely, growers definitely. But there are also smaller groups inside of our community. I'm thinking of those that are the people who fly drones and our shooting clubs, etc., who have, you know, if I mention our shooting clubs, they've had to move in regards to our lack of robust spatial planning in the past, you know, and it'll be really good for us to engage in those kinds of organisations, those niche organisations, to ensure that we're helping future-proof them in their locations moving forward. Yeah, so in line with kind of the other smaller groups, I think that we also need to be paying attention to those.
Thank you, Councillor Burdett.
Like Gisborne, this year, exciting innovations happening on the coast. Take part in the blueberry establishment, which is huge, megabucks. You go further north, I totally concur with you in terms of the growing of cannabis. Now that it's become legal, it's about to flourish, really flourish. And listening to the directors.
You got to vote first. It's not quite legal. You got to vote.
Hey, just step back. These guys know what they're about. I've followed it and listened to them. They've got experts on board taking the right advice, so I can see big things happening there. But not only that, I personally have offers to purchase some of my freehold property, which I'm not about to sell, but the interest is there from not only the Gisborne end, but from the Bay of Plenty in terms of new products. So all around, and if you think about our Waipu River, the much vaunted Waipu River, we now have 5 processing plants on that river extracting metal. 15 months ago, there was only 1. And that's a growth area, even though we're causing issues. But all across the board, the farming sector is on a real high. There's good returns, and there's a lot of money being spent in redevelopment. So all in all, I mean, as I said, for Gisborne and the coast, this is exciting times.
Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is about community engagement plan and how we're going to go out to the community and do it.
Sure.
It's not meant to be, this isn't, by all means, we want to be inclusive of all groups in the community. And if they're not identified in here, it doesn't mean we're not going to be talking to them. We want all the stakeholders, every person that wants anything to do with the spatial planning, to get involved with the process. So don't look at it as being exclusive and excluding groups. It's meant to be inclusive. And I'd just like to move the paper.
Councillor Akuhata Brown.
Just following on, yes, I'm really grateful, thank you, that this isn't going to sit in a status quo space. It's broadening the scope of how we do it, and that excites me. I think we know for sure that we need to ensure we engage this whole community. I guess for me, I see the schools are in there. Primary schools could be added in the mix, and I'm sure we'll talk to little people too, because as you say, the future is theirs in down the road space. I'm heartened to see that focus on set groups is in this community engaged space, and thank you for that. So I just am looking forward to seeing what feedback we will get and what people's desires, dreams, aspirations will be. So thank you for taking a lead in this, our sponsor. I look forward to what comes of it. Kia ora.
Kia ora. I just want to page 13, is it? Or 53 of 132. Yeah, for 13, is it? 13.
Page 53 of the
yeah.
agenda.
Future growth. 53, is it? Yeah, 53 of 132. Oh, yeah, that's how they're numbered. Yep, page 53 of 132. We will be, future growth, third sentence, we will be working with the government. I'd like to insert developers because they are the ones that actually do the doing. Government, can't even, yeah, okay.
Just
that's my contribution.
just on that, note, you know, I know I'm going on about this all the time about our population. I'm just reading
yes,
here.
Yes, I forgot.
4,000 people expected over the next 25 years. We've had 2,000 in the last 18 months. You know, if we're going to keep on doing a spatial plan for the future and looking at possible what our population growth is going to be and going on these measly figures, which I'm seeing all the time, and it's coming up down the track as well, and our growth is going hugely more than what has ever been recorded, ever, you know, our mindset's not in the right place. You know, the spatial plan is a 2050 futuristic document that is aligning our place and our lifestyles. You know, when I look at Tairawhiti, I call that's growth out of control, totally growth out of control. We do not want to go down that track and end up like a place where you can't even get from A to B like we normally do in 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, you know. So the spatial plan is really important. But when I read all these things about the projected population growth, and I see what that's, and that just creates a negative mindset. So I would really like to see some
it should be about 60,
factual figures on actually what's going on out there, because you know, while we're sitting here talking, there's more people just flocking to this town, and we need to be able to value manage it.
Yeah, I think the population is a bit conservative, but they always just say, "Oh, that's what Stats New Zealand is projecting." That's what census is 3 years behind anyway.
You have
Brian, Councillor Wilson, and then.
Okay, Your Worship, just the section around a thriving economy. And the key questions that are there are really just about what it is that we need to develop, the sort of industries that we've already got. There's nothing around there from the people. Do you see that the future of this region is not just in those traditional industries that we've already got? Shouldn't we be asking people, do they want to see a different sort of economy in our region? A much higher value added to those primary industries. We're talking about technology, a lifestyle balance thing. To me, I don't think there's the opportunity in here really to look to the future again about where we might want to see our region in the future, not just logs going out through the port, prime industry, without a lot of value added to it. So I just think there could be some questions around what do people want to see as the industries in the future for this region. I know I would have something to say about that, and I see that the future in our region is that, you know, we've got a beautiful coastline, there's a great lifestyle here, and having heavy trucks running through our region all the time with bulk product going out through the wharf is not the way to go, I believe. Okay, it is at the moment, and it probably will be for a long time to come, but we should be aiming for something different to make it a higher value economy. And I wouldn't have the opportunity to say that, I don't think, in the questions that are there.
Thank you for that motivation. Councillor Fenn, Councillor Dunn.
Oh, just adding on to that, I guess those questions sit with places like AT and stuff like that. I know in the space that I'm working with employers and stuff, we're asking those questions, we're looking at those questions, and given what is your industry going to look like as far as technology and new industries. I just want to probably say thanks. I'm excited about a spatial plan. And the strategies that we're starting to, I guess, create for the region and collaboratively. It's awesome. It's about time. So, yeah, well done. And the people, the councillors on the advisory group, wicked.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, I'm enjoying listening to the dialogue around the table. The view I'm taking on the spatial plan is that we're trying to create an enabling environment for all of these players to come in and do what they need to do. We're not meant to know who they are going to be. We don't know, I don't know what the jobs of the future are going to be. I don't know what the industries of the future are going to be. What we do know is there need to be particular conditions in the city so that they can come and set up here and do their business. And that's essentially what we're talking about with the spatial plan. Water, soil, roads, transport, it's those things which a council is fundamentally responsible for. So I don't think we should get a little unease, don't know what they're going to be or where we're going, but ensuring that we have the conditions that they can come here is essentially what we do need to keep a really close eye on.
Thank you. Right, Kato, do you have any last comments?
Through the chair, thank you. I just want to reiterate the aspiration is around sustainable growth for the region. The questions are intended to be aspirational, so obviously all the feedback is welcomed and it will be an iterative process as we go along. I'm sure our first engagement will teach us a lot of lessons, so as we go, our staff will be adapting to what we're hearing. Obviously, there's knowledge gaps. And I think we've been quite transparent about that, and we're really wanting our community to tell us, all and sundry, you know, the different spectrums of our community. They're going to be key to shaping us with and telling us what conditions they need to meet their aspirations. It's intended to be a transparent process, future growth, security of supply, infrastructure, everything that they need for our community to thrive. That's the end game, how we get there. We really want all your networks reached to feedback into this process. So, yummy.
Yummy. Rick, you've got the recommendations, 1, 2, 3, they've been moved. All in favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Coffee. Thank you. 96. Major projects, is it?
59. Governance structures.
Oh, governance structures. What's wrong with our governance structures? 59. Yeah. Oh, yep. Major projects governance structures. There you go, all in front of you. Is that all? Page 59. Moved by Councillor Seymour, seconded by Councillor Stoltz. Any debate? Form, function, all in favour? Aye, contrary. Carried. Major projects. Did you? 90, okay, Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm glad that Councillor Seymour's read this clearly and you've put it through so swiftly. But I wanted to just mention that this is very good for our clarity. The fact that councillors shouldn't be on steering groups, because steering groups are essentially a managing a delivery task. Advisory groups, it seemed to me when I read this that when you, in your capacity as an advisory group, you should essentially take off your council hat and be, whilst using a council perspective, you're not there as a councillor who is governing and managing the project. So I think having this clarity is very good going forward and helps us to stop our nature in the future, which is to get too involved when we're brought in at that level. Thank you.
Thank you. Page 96 out of 132. Major projects, please, focusing new low significance. So I move because it's low risk. Right. Second by Councillor Burdett. Any matters from that report? Updates, any further updates since printing? Thank you to Desiree Duploy. Any questions? Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, on page 104 of the Cook replica, I've had a discussion lately with Nick Tupper and talked to him about why move the Cook statue on Tairawhiti. Why don't they just look at adding the Maori chief at the time? I said it's in a terrific position, overlooks our bay, overlooks Gisborne itself, and he said that's worth a discussion. He hadn't really thought of it, but he thought it was worth discussing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stoltz.
100. I just wanted to ask something about the Olympic pool redevelopment. At the bottom where we talk about the funding, the last sentence says a large portion of council's 5.65 million seed funding will be utilised to fund the required design phase. Was that always our agreement that that money would be used to get us to where we want to be, to then apply for external funding, or have things now changed that we have to relook our design and have a little bit more community korero around that? And this has now changed, or is this just how it always have been, that our money will be used for that initial phase?
Yes, so that's correct. Our money will be used for the initial phase. So even if there is additional, while we're going to be doing some additional community engagement, that is still earmarked for design and concept and redesign and design to get it shovel ready, basically. Yeah.
Councillor Seymour.
Thank you, Your Worship. On page, and it's 8 of the Chief Executive's report, because you can't read the number because it's printed under the name, but cycle and walkways heading, and under budget, and we did bring this up last week at regional transport, but it does need to be addressed, I think. So we're NZTA fully funds cycleway, and we've got a lovely new concrete path that links the former part of the cycleway. I mean, we know who ends up being responsible for the maintenance. It's this council. And so beside that new path, as we get the spring and the autumn growth, the grass is growing all over it. The kikuyu is growing all over the concrete path. It's been reported to me that there's castor oil plants growing alongside it. And I understand it falls into Mr. White's budget. Unfortunately, Mr. White's not in the room right now. But, you know, so it's a really good idea to have these assets for our city funded by NZTA, but they then fall into, I believe, our budget. So unless we can extract from NZTA some contribution towards the ongoing maintenance of them, it looks really untidy. And someone who walks on it regularly tells me that it is really untidy. And for most part, you can see from as you drive by. So both ends that are flat are easily mown, but quite a lot of that is on a raised section, which is not going to be so easy to mow. And then there's an untidy mess between the concrete pathway and the roadside. The blackberry has been sprayed, pretty much all of it. There's one or two I can see that aren't sprayed. So who's going to maintain that? Because we say we want our city to look nice and sharp and we produce a cycleway, and then there is the issue, which I'll just touch on as well, and I see we're going to have an audit of it, that we've had raised with us, public safety at crossing, even in the crossings, for children crossing to get back onto one side of the road or the other. And that was raised last week, again, at Regional Land Transport, where mothers and kids on bikes feel unsafe in the middle of the road. We know those barriers are put there to give them some safety.
Nadine.
Through the chair, the winery cycleway hasn't been handed over to operations yet, phase 2. It hasn't been completed. Once it's completed, it gets handed back to council. When it gets handed to council, Tairawhiti Roads through NZTA pays recreational services to maintain it. So we get funding from NZTA to carry on the maintenance. Tairawhiti Roads has come to an agreement with recreational services through the Livable Communities contract to maintain that pathway once that comes into operation.
So supplementary then, can we expect them to mow it until they hand it over? Because it looks really untidy.
I think they will, so through the chair, they will have one more mow before they hand it back through, which is at the end of this month. So it will be mown before it gets handed back. Through the chair, the safety at the crossings, as with any NZTA state highway project, the safety coordinator goes out and checks those crossings to make sure they're doing what they were supposed to be doing and checking that the barriers are still going to be safe. So there's a review and a safety audit of every project once it's finished. We're waiting for that to come back in regards to those crossings.
Thank you.
Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. I just wanted to add on to the conversation in respect to those crossings and hope that we have the opportunity to feed into that. As most of you probably know, I live directly opposite one of those crossings, and so view people and families, not just mothers and children, also fathers and children, crossing all of the time. There's been a real behavioural change by drivers in that area, and it has caused a lot of problems on that piece of highway, where cars will actively stop for people crossing in the middle of a highway. And as you know, when you're coming around that, when you're coming off the bend there by Sponge Bay, coming into the city, you have a short period of visibility. Any distracted driver could easily go up the back of another one and take out a group of people on that crossing, and it happens all the time. I wouldn't be exaggerating to say it happens more than once daily.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of unintended consequences. Thank you, Councillor Seymour.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I support that. I've seen it happen. Councillor Foster.
Thank you. I just want to touch with the Cook replica moving from Titarangi as well. I've got no problem with the removal of it, and I guess it's going to be in the next month or so, reading of this. But there is a concept of what's going to go in its place, and it looks like it's going to have separate funding. I just would like a bit more information about this if possible. What's going to be in its place going to be there for the 2019 sesquicentennial, and what is it going to look like on that site? Has there been any interim designs of what that site is going to look like? Is there any more update than from what I can read on this?
Through your worship, I might just ask Mr. White if he has any further information on the Cook Plaza redesign.
Through the chair, so the plan for the Cook Plaza is that the statue will be removed this year, April, I think it is, April, May. In terms of the redesign, that's going to take a little bit longer to do. but it will be tidy for October.
What about Councillor McLean's notion of having coexistence?
Your Worship, there's a resolution that Council made around the removal of Cook. The museum has made preparations to receive him, so that would be a whole process to undo.
Oh, sorry, can I just get clarification from Mr. White? He mentioned it would be tidied, not completed. Is that the case? It'll just be removed and tidied up, but there'll be no nothing completed for 2019?
Through the chair, there's some work being done with Ngāti Onioni on how that the Cook Plaza is to be developed, and that's going to take a little bit longer, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Stoltz, Councillor Dunn.
I should have asked earlier when I asked my questions. On page 102, at the top we talk about the navigations, the Inner Harbour project, and we talk about the amenity block. Where's the Wainui Reserve that you are referring to? It says here Wainui Reserve is underway with contractors having been on site since 21 January.
That's where the Norfolk Pines have died.
And I'm not sure where the Wainui Reserve fits into relation to the navigation of the Inner Harbour.
So through your worship, the Wainui Reserve is that little stretch of land next to the Gladstone Road Bridge on the wharf side there. So there's a little strip, we have a pump station there with a Graham Mudge mural on it, which is where Fulton Hogan. So where Fulton Hogan are working from Lone Star right back to the entrance of the Inner Harbour there.
Yes, Councillor Dunn.
Yes, I just wanted to say quickly that I think the Gladstone Road Bridge looks amazing. I drove across it and think this, I'm so pleased we made that decision. And is there going to be a barrier between the road and the pedestrians on it? So I'm worried that's going to block my views.
It's all see-through. Councillor Akuhata Brown. There's no barrier.
Through your worship. Through your worship, can I first start by saying this is an NZTA project? At this stage, they have put in a funding request for a barrier on that side. When we open it in a couple of weeks' time, there won't be a barrier there when it first opens. We have pushed very hard for NZTA to get the funding for the barrier, but we haven't had that confirmed as of yet.
Yeah, is this Councillor Akuhata Brown?
Oh, interesting. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. My question is to you as well, because I believe you're involved with this wonderful project, Drainwise. Just in regards to it, thank you for what we've been reported today. Unrealistic expectations of when program success will be evident. Are those unrealistic expectations from resident in that space? Sorry, maybe it's a Nadine question. I just wasn't sure. But yeah, so just can I just unpack that a little? Thanks.
So through the chair, the issue we have with Drainwise is managing expectations in the communities that are affected by wastewater that ends up on their properties. So a lot of people are thinking that once we come in and fix the stormwater on their property, that that's going to fix the problem and that they won't have it happen this winter. So with the 7 properties, well, 7 different sites that we're working with the properties to clear things, it's around knowing that it's going to take time for us to roll out the program and make multiple fixes before we're going to see real tangible benefits from scours and things. We've got anecdotal evidence, but we don't have tangible evidence now of how much of a reduction we're having with scours being open. So it's going to take time for us to build that extra capacity by getting the stormwater out of there.
Can we just, Councillor Foster, Councillor Fenn.
Yeah, this is to do with Drainwise. This is to do with Drainwise as well on page 108, and it's just above where Councillor Brown mentioned. I'll just read out the sentence because I'd like a little bit of clarity over it, please. The operational budget for Drainwise is 44% spent. Key operational costs will arise in the first 7 months of 2019. This is due to consenting costs associated with applying for a resource consent for emergency discharges and other operational activities related to Drainwise. Could I just get a little bit of clarity around that paragraph, please?
So through the chair, the project we're referring to there is associated with Drainwise, and Drainwise is part of the wider program from the freshwater plan around needing a resource consent for discharges to happen into the future. Part of what we need to do is put a resource consent together around when we open the scours. We need to do a whole lot of research and work on what we've done with DrainWise, the effects, the problems and those things to inform that resource consent. So the Lifelines Department needs to apply for a resource consent for the scours. Part of that spend is around building that resource consent cost, but then also building the evidence base of the work that we've done to date within DrainWise to show what that is. It's a very different, it's operational costs, it's not capital costs, and the capital cost is the 540,000 you put aside in the LTP for on property. This is very separate. This is money that was put aside specifically for the resource consent and the changes that we need to make in the LTP.
On that, how often do we have to apply for resource consent to discharge?
So this is a new requirement under the freshwater plan. When the freshwater plan went through, we're no longer able to use the provisions that we did in the previous plan to open the scours. As part of the freshwater management plan, we need to apply for a resource consent and have that lodged by 2020 for us to be able to continue to do that. The resource consent isn't for permission to open, it's the process and the procedures that we will have when it comes to opening the scours. As part of that for the Commissioner, we have to show how we're moving our resources as much as possible to stop doing it where we can. So it's around building the evidence base to show that we're doing everything we can to reduce the event and overflows. And then once we do have one, what's the procedure that kicks into place around making that decision, and then the subsequent things that fall after that around monitoring the effects and that kind of thing.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fenn.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, Councillor Seymour, did you?
Councillor Fenn.
Okay, thank you. Some of my questions have already been answered, but in the first sentence there under DrainWise, Mr. Wilson, I just wanted, you've got a clear set of achievable deliverables have now been set. Can you just give me a little bit of clarity on what that means? Thanks.
So through the Chair, the program that we're talking about there is we've identified the properties that we're going to be working through this financial year for the on-property fixes. So we have 7 of those that are indifferent from either being designed right through to being costed, or we're waiting for the contractor to turn up and do those. With each of the properties that have been identified, so this is the 540,000 for on-property fixes, we have a program of works that we know that we will deliver this financial year. On top of that, we also have the program set and locked down for the inspections that the DrainWise team is taking as well. So we have certainty of what we will be able to achieve. The reason why we've put that in is because for the DrainWise on property, we've had a lot of discussion with residents around what the fixes are going to be, how they're going to change things. And that's something that has taken till now to get agreement from residents around what's going to go where and why they need to be part of the solution.
Councillor Seymour. Thank you very much. All in favour? Contrary, carried. Connected, spatial plan, page 112. Any matters from that? There's a noting report. We've had a good discussion on the other one, but this is from the Abley Consultants. Any comments, Councillor Dunn, leader of the... Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Fenn. No? Dowsing? Oh, it sounded like Councillor Fenn's there. It's squeaky. Councillor Dunn, Councillor Dowsing. 2 Ds. Right. No comments. Thank you. Well, this is just complimentary to the first paper. All in favour? Aye. Contrary, carried. No, I don't have any written questions or anything like that. But you can ask them. I'll be liberal. Yes.
I'll just. I wasn't quite sure of you. Page 122 of that last report. Is this something I'd just like to bring up actually, because I attended the Regional Transport Committee meeting the other week. And if you'll note in there the apologies to that meeting and the apologies to the previous meeting and before that. And I've got to say that, you know, looking at the Regional Transport Committee from the outside in, I was here the other week. Last week, I wasn't me to speak. I just was looking and seeing it's so ineffective. It is so ineffective. It's a joke. It's actually it's an insult to NZTA and to ourselves. What the delivery of that committee does, having the public participation in there. I mean, this is an important committee. This determines our roading future, the policies and everything of our roading, and we've got half the members not turning up. The ones that are there, the councillors, they know the history behind it. All us councillors know the history of roading and where we need to be going and the policies, and the relationship with NZTA is so important. And I believe this committee actually does us a really bad injustice for the future of our roading in this in our region. And I would like to promote that we look at the Regional Transport Committee and give it a good shake-up. It needs to be all councillors involved. It is such an important committee for roading is our forefront of our transport modes in and out of the space where
okay, you got your point across. Yeah. Thank you very much. Mr. Burnett.
I think it's
different topic.
No, can I just respond to the same topic? Because Councillor Foster and I were there at the same time. I've written a paper on that very issue, which the Chief Executive has asked to be sent to be a committee paper. I put it as an opinion piece, but it's going to be a paper to the committee because I share all of the issues you raised.
Councillor Burnett.
Did remind my colleagues and others at the meeting, strategic planning committee plus setting a policy. Now, over the years, it has done quite a good job. I concede that the drop-off has been quite marked. I mean, if they're not personally involved, they seem to just flag it away. But it is the only chance, and I repeat, that we are able to sit at a committee table with a member of the Transport Agency. And to Emma's credit, she does give good reports, although the last one was a bit waffly. But all that aside, we...
You write that in the paper.
No, yeah, but hey, the reports she brings to the table are very good. Most occasions they're pretty detailed, and we've got a future of what the Transport Agency intend funding on Highway 35.
Thank you, Councillor. You made a clear point there. So there's a paper from Councillor Seymour going to this, and I bet those people that are concerned they'll be reading it in the Gisborne Herald. Anyway, I should have asked for those liberal comments that haven't been on front of me. My lapsing, I trust my councillors most of the time. Right, we have public excluded. Nothing in it. All in favour? Contrary. And then we move the minutes of those meeting. I move. Second by Councillor Fenn. All in favour? Contrary. Carried. Move out of committee. Move back into public. Re-emitted. Moved by myself. Seconded by Councillor Fenn. All in favour? Aye. Contrary. Carried. Yes. What's next now? We've got Mr. Rob Telfer.